Today's episode is brought to you by Patreon. If you're interested in supporting the show, go to patreon.com/JoshuaVelas and become a $2 backer today and get early access to the new episodes. I'll be leaving a link in the description down below, but for now, on to today's episode. You're listening to the Augmented Experience podcast. I'm your host, as usual, Joshua Velas. I'm a student, musician, and a gamer at heart. Join me as I sit down every week to talk about all the latest news in the technology, business, and video game world. I hope you guys enjoy.
All right, everybody, welcome back to the show. My name is Joshua Velas. I'm your host as usual, and obviously, welcome back to the show. Today's episode 174 of the show, and before we get started, I'm going to do a bit of housekeeping quick because, well, you guys know what I like to do around here. It only makes sense that we do it, so let's get on with the house cleaning, shall we? I do want to say thank you guys for coming back and listening to today's episode. It really means a lot to me. You guys constantly make, time to download these episodes, to share these episodes, to watch these episodes, obviously listen to them too, because we're both an audio and a video podcast, even though we'll get into that a little bit later. But I do thank you guys for making time for just listening to me, letting me have a piece of your day, because it really means a lot to me. And I greatly appreciate all the support. We're almost at 2,500 total downloads. So again, guys, I greatly appreciate that. Hopefully we can hit 3,000 by the end of the year, or at least 3,000 before the 3-year anniversary of the show. Holy crap. But I'm really grateful. I'm appreciative of everything you guys have done, and you guys are wonderful. You guys are awesome. And I appreciate you guys for everything. I do want to say thank you to the Patreon backers for supporting the show. Thank you guys for coming back and listening. And obviously, you get benefits for being a Patreon backer, so you can click the link down below and get early access to the episodes. But overall, I do want to say, I want to address this quickly, that obviously if you're watching the YouTube version, there just has a backdrop. There's no video of me talking and seeing my face and everything. It's because we're trying to figure out things to organize here in the room, since it's a bit trickier, since my space and getting everything set up is a bit trickier than it normally is, especially in a dorm room where I have the whole space myself. I have it the way I want it, and here it's not as so, or I'm more limited by what I can do here. So for now, we're just doing backdrops, but at least it's related to the topics. So I hope you guys can forgive me for that, and we're going to try. That doesn't mean the video versions are gone forever. That just means, well, it's still going on YouTube. This is both, it's just an audio version with a backdrop for the video, and then obviously the audio version is just the normal audio version. But I greatly appreciate you guys. You guys are great. You guys are wonderful, and I hope you guys understand. That doesn't mean we're not going to have, you're going to see my face again. Of course you're going to see my face again. Why wouldn't you? But it's just, we have to get it all set up and everything, and we're trying to figure it out, but work is just, work is work, and, we got to pay the bills around here. So that's just how things are. But it's time that we talk about today's episode, because I've been wanting to talk about this for a while now, because I've seen a lot of hot takes about it. And one of my, opinions got shown up in a video from Front Page Tech, where I'm not ashamed of it. It's just, hey, I thought they were fake, but they weren't. And I'm like, hey, I took my piece of humble pie and, moved on, because that's just what real men do. But today we're going to be talking about Windows 11. And what exactly are we going to be talking about Windows 11 that hasn't been beaten to death? But I feel like a lot of stigma towards Windows 11 seems pretty negative, even though there's a lot of people that are very open. Like Marques Brownlee has come out and said that he likes it. He thinks it's going to be good. Granted, he wouldn't switch to it full time, because obviously he's a Mac user, because that's the whole point, is that a lot of people that don't like it obviously keep drawing to the conclusion that it just looks too much like Mac OS, or it looks like a cheap, carbon copy of Mac OS. But I do feel like what Microsoft is showing off and everything with Windows 11, it makes it look promising. I don't think it's going to fall into the trend that a lot of people try to use, where when there's always a good Windows version, there always has to be a bad one. Prime example, XP was great. Everyone liked XP. Then Vista was blech. And then Windows 7, yay. Windows 8, blech. And then Windows 10, if we're being honest with Windows 10. With Windows 10, if we're talking about when it came out, it was bleh. It was a dumpster fire. Let's be honest here. But as time has gone on, in our current iteration at the time of this recording, and obviously the time of this episode going live, it's actually really good. And I personally can say, being someone that likes using Windows, I haven't had an I wouldn't have, let's say I haven't had an issue using Windows 10. Have I dealt with some bugs? Let's be honest, we always do. But that's the fun part of it, is you get to tinker. But I get there's people that don't want to deal with that. That's perfectly fine. And there's also like some software that's better on macOS than it is for Windows, and we're going to be objective and fair about it because that's just true. But we also have to establish the use cases of macOS versus Windows. And this is where I feel like a lot of people have a problem with Windows 11 specifically, is a lot of people that don't like it are the people that would never use Windows to begin with, like macOS users. Nothing wrong with using macOS. I've used macOS. I like macOS. It's just for what I do personally, it's not what I need, and it doesn't meet my use cases. Like primarily, like say when I was still an engineering student, I could obviously not use a Mac to do my work. I'm just being honest with you. You can never justify using a Mac for an engineering workload that's computer engineering, architecture, because a lot of the software obviously is properly designed and heavily favors Windows. And that's why colleges, and specifically engineering colleges, do not recommend Macs for engineering students, because it just doesn't do the job, and that's okay. It's not supposed to do everything. That's just objective fact. Like, I know some people don't like to hear this, but when we think of Macs and macOS, it's primarily designed for a creative workflow. That's just how it's been promoted. That's why the bundles come with a lot of creative software and not, engineering software. Keep in mind, I didn't say it's not professional tools. It still is a professional tool. It's just not a professional tool for somebody else. It's primarily designed for creatives, people that might create content, videos, audio, obviously, running Adobe Creative Suite on macOS, since it's all, specifically on iMacs, it's an all-in-one, so you get a nice display to edit your photos on and all your videos. But what are we getting at exactly here? What I have noticed primarily from a lot of the commentary from Windows 11 is that it's very negatively skewed by people that support macOS. That's fine. I don't expect them to like it, but we also have to be objective and also, not just hate on it because it's something that we don't use. Like, I get it. People like Jon Prosser, and I'm not just trying to drop names, but I'm just being honest because, when you're a public figure, I'm sorry, but if you're a public figure, you're allowed to, I wouldn't say criticize, but you're allowed to critique people's takes. That's just honest fact. Like, you can critique mine, and that's okay, because when you put something on the internet and you're in the public space, you're open to criticism. You are not a private citizen. So, anything you say can and will be used against you. But let's use Jon Prosser. Jon was honest. He thought it looked ugly. He thought it looked bad. He thought it looked terrible. But that's because Jon is primarily a macOS user. That's fine. I even commented. I'm like, hey, it's not that bad if we look at this objectively. And that's okay that Jon doesn't want to look at it objectively. No one's telling him to look at it objectively. But we have to call it how it is and understand, like, hey, he has his bias. He's allowed to have his bias. We're not trying to correct him. We're not trying to conform him. But when you start trying to present information as objective fact, when it's just an opinion, that's where we have to be open to criticism. We have to be open to having conversations, because if we're not, then what's the point of trying to promote some free encompassing space that anybody can share their ideas, when it's like, hey, if you share your ideas, just be mindful, you're allowed to be criticized for them. That's what's called fair and balanced. That's, being truly open and being, welcoming, inclusive, that you allow people to share their beliefs, but they also understand, hey, we would like to have a discussion about why you think the way that you think. It's a healthy discussion, and we have to be willing to engage in these conversations and not walk away. But here we are with Windows 11, where I saw a lot of the features and I'm like, hey, I think this is pretty cool. I thought the gaming performance boost, the fact that it's using the technology of smart delivery, that it's baked into Windows, and as long as you have a PCIe Gen 3 or Gen 4 SSD, then it pretty much works. So as long as your computer can run Windows 11, which I understand that's a whole different debacle, we're not going to get into that, since that is, it's been talked to death. People are upset, but hey, in my opinion, if I think about it, I get it. Technology advances rapidly. What I don't like is when someone talks about a software update and it's very inconsistent with how it's presented. per se. Think about it like this. Like, they say these are the recommended specs to upgrade to Windows 11, or this is how your computer can be compatible. And yet when you try to do it, it's like not compatible. So it's a giant mess. I'm not going to say I don't want to deal with it. It's just, that's not what we're trying to address right now, because it's just a reality. We're not trying to address that right now. But when I take a look at Windows 11, like take a step back and I look at it and I'm like, okay, this is how I feel. I think it looks good. I don't think it's the greatest thing in the world. I'm interested to see how it performs when it finally launches. Personally, I'm not going to put it day one. I'm not going to put this on my computer day one. I will highly, highly, highly recommend that you do not put this on your personal computer day one. I would recommend running it on a virtual machine, if I'm being honest with you. And being honest, figuring out how to make a virtual machine or use a virtual machine is actually pretty easy, given we live in the day of the internet where you can literally look up anything on YouTube or Google it. Like, you pretty much can figure out how to do it pretty easily. It's not that hard. And then just put it on a virtual machine and see how it runs. I do not recommend putting this on your professional. If you only have one computer to do all your work on, do not put Windows 11 on it. Like, do not do it. It is a terrible idea. Don't do it. Give it some time. Let's see how it performs. Do I think it will perform as bad as Windows 10 when Windows 10 launched? No, but that's also probably the optimist in me talking, where it's like, in theory it shouldn't be as bad, but am I willing to bet my cards on it? I don't know about that, but it's one of those things where, how would I say? It's one of those things where it's hard to say. Do I think it looks good, like especially with the themes and everything? Yes, I think it's cool that some things are more streamlined, that it looks nicer. I just hope that they do get rid of a lot of the older elements built into it, that they get rid of a lot of, I wouldn't say change the command prompt, but at least bump up how some things look, because obviously they're pretty dated. They don't match the aesthetic that they're trying to go for. I think the new Xbox app on PC looks much better than what we had before. I think, to be honest, since Microsoft wasn't able to acquire Discord, I think bumping up the Xbox app and making it more better and properly able to, promote the Xbox brand, because the whole point was Microsoft wanted to buy out Discord to incorporate into Xbox, and putting it together would have been great, but obviously that didn't happen. So I think bumping up the Xbox Party app on PC is a good idea, since now it allows people to connect with their friends that still have Xboxes, that haven't gone to PC, or people that like using their Xbox but they want to talk to their friends on PC, stuff like that. However, obviously the smart delivery, that's one thing I mentioned, where I think it's really great that it's being incorporated for free, that it's going to boost your performance and make things a little bit run smoother and load quicker. So I think that's actually really nice that that's going to happen. I think overall, when it comes to Windows 11, it looks promising, but I just don't agree with a lot of the negative discourse going on, because, primarily for macOS, where it's like, oh, it's just a carbon copy, it doesn't look that nice. And people talking about, hey, I don't like I would say the Windows button and everything, like everything being so centered. Well, they did show that you can push it back to normal, which I prefer it being like, personally, I prefer it in the bottom left and everything, pushed over to the left rather than being in the middle. But I get what they're trying to go for. Like, I get they're trying to go for like this widget, let's be honest, it does look like modern versions of macOS, where it's just everything in the middle, very centered, and then obviously widgets on the side and everything like that. But to me, I don't think it looks bad. I think it looks really good. I do think we should really wait to see a final version of this sucker before we try to jump the gun and be like, this is the greatest version or the worst version of Windows ever. Because let's be honest, if it turns out bad, then we're going to call it bad. That's just how we're going to do it around here. We're not going to beat around the bush and be like, oh, this is okay. I don't think this is that good. Like, no. We're going to be honest. And if it's not good at launch, then we're going to critique Microsoft for it, because they've, like, to be honest, to me, it's weird that Windows 11 even exists. Like, that's my main thing that I have, is like, it's weird that it exists to begin with, when Microsoft said that they were more focused on just making Windows 10 the last version of Windows ever and just updating it over time. Now, granted, they obviously backpedaled that, because now we have Windows 11 coming. But still, like, to me, it's just, I am worried that it is going to come out half-assed, given Microsoft's track record with a lot of things, given that we've seen how Windows Vista was at launch, we've seen how Windows 8 was, we've seen how Windows 10 was at launch. Granted, they have shown that they, with being willing to listen to their community and stuff, that, hey, it can get better. Because I don't agree with people that like macOS and just say Windows is the most buggiest mess ever. I'm like, no, it's not true. It's not the most buggiest mess, because if that was the case, then people wouldn't use it, and a lot of professional environments wouldn't use it. It's like, let's be honest here. If it really was as buggy as people made it out to be, nobody would use Windows. Nobody would use a Windows PC. Nobody would build their own computer. It would just be a buggy mess that no one would ever touch. It would be, most people would probably be using Linux if they know how to use it, or just buy a Mac. But let's be honest, it's not. Like, I think that's just a bad misconception that people have, that they think Windows is just this buggy, horrible mess, that it doesn't work and that it's too inconsistent. I'm like, well, I haven't run into any of these inconsistencies. Have I run into hiccups here and there? Yeah, but it's nothing that really affects my workflow per se, if we say it like that. Like, it does have hiccups. Like, macOS isn't this perfect, flawless software. Like, it's not this perfect operating system. I hope you guys realize that. Like, it's not the holy grail of operating systems, because, well, we have three. We have Linux, we have macOS, and then we have Windows. Like, macOS isn't this holy grail of, like, this is what everything should strive to be, because in its own right, it's not perfect either. That's just a cold, hard reality. There's also limitations with each software, with each operating system. That's the reality of it. It's the same way with hardware. It's like, if every piece of hardware could do the exact same thing, then there would be no point in, buying something else, because it doesn't matter what you buy, because it still gets you the same end goal. Like, there's differences. They're all specialized. They all do something specific that they're really good at. Like Windows, yes, Windows can handle a lot of the engineering workflows. It can handle a lot of, gaming. That's like, people say we want gaming on Mac, and I'm like, gaming on Mac is stupid. I'm sorry if that hurts your feelings if you have a Mac. But gaming was not designed for a Mac. Mac OS was not designed with gaming in mind. It just wasn't. Like, a Mac is designed for a creative workflow. That's what it's for. It's its purpose. A lot of people that buy a Mac, it's for creative workflow. And granted, yes, it can also do Excel spreadsheets. It can do all this other stuff. Like, business kids like buying Macs. Like, they like buying MacBooks. They really do, because it just does what they want. But that doesn't mean that a Windows laptop or a Windows PC couldn't do the same thing. It's just, you wanted it because it was a Mac. But obviously, there's more to it with, like, I know I'm trying to make it sound super generalized and specific, but it's not. Like, there's many factors that go into buying a piece of technology that, maybe that's just the brand you like, or maybe there's actually something in it that you can't get anywhere else, and that's why you buy it. But if we're being honest here, it's one of those things where I don't think one software is better than the other. And that's where I think a lot of the problem lies with how people respond to Windows 11, especially if they're a macOS user, is that they obviously try to make it seem like macOS is the greatest thing ever and that everyone should just use it. But I'm like, well, yes and no. I do think people should be familiar with how to use it, and if it works for them, they should use it. But it shouldn't be the only thing you use. Like, I personally, like, if I was ever to have a Mac, like, say I buy a MacBook again, if I was to use a MacBook, I would still keep my PC, because to me, I know my workflow and I know what I have to do. I'd rather have both and know how to use both properly, because one, if I ever want to, say, work a gig or work with a client and, I'm doing IT work and they only use Macs, hey, I know how to work on a Mac. I know how to use a Mac. So I'm well versed and I'm more equipped, and that helps me in the job. I'd rather not be just stubborn and be like, oh, I only use one operating system. Sorry, man, I don't know how to use this. I can figure it out as I go along, but I'd rather be prepared, well equipped to do what needs to be done. You get what I'm saying? Like, that's where I think being more well-rounded is more important. And the same thing applies here with operating systems, is you should be well versed with how each operating system works, what's their pros, what's their cons, what's their limitations, and why you don't use it. Like, you should be able to make those decisions as a rational human being, because in theory, we are all rational human beings. That is the hope. That is the expectation. Does it mean it's 100% true? Probably not, but we're going with it. But I will say, at the end of the day, I don't think Windows 11 is bad. I don't think it looks bad. Am I concerned with how it runs? Yes, I'm very concerned, because I want to see a final build running. Obviously, it's not ready yet until the end of the year, but still, my personal recommendation is Do not install this day one. Do not do it. I think it would be a terrible idea. Like, I personally think you would be crazy for putting this on your computer day one. I'm being 100% honest with you. You must be loose in your head to think it's a good idea to put this on your computer day one. I get it, the performance for stuff, like people want to test it. And there are people that will. There's people that have computers that, you know, that aren't their main rig that they're willing to dispose of. And hey, that's, you know, you do you, fam. Am I going to jump day one? Hell no, I'm not. Now, I eventually will do some commentary later down the road where we talk about the differences between macOS and Windows, and to have that discussion, because I feel like it's very important to understand the perspective, you know, because I have experience using macOS, but I'm not an avid macOS user. But I know people that are, and I could definitely talk to them if I want to have a conversation about, you know, let's talk about the intricacies of macOS versus Windows and see, like, hey, why are these things so specialized? Like, and why do you use it? Like, you know, understand people's rationale and why they do what they do is always a great way of getting to know people. And it's also a great way of interacting, because if you can truly understand where someone's coming from their perspective of things, it helps so much in the long run, guys. I'm being honest. Like, I know we're delving into like life advice stuff, but it's so important, guys. It really is. And I'm not BSing you when I say that. It is so important to understand where people are coming from and their perspective on things, because it just makes having a conversation so much more fun, so much more engaging, and it doesn't make it so one-sided. You know, that's why I like doing the show, because you guys pick topics. So you guys have input. You guys let me know what you want me to talk about, and then I talk about it and I give my take. And whether you like it or not, that's fine. Like, it's fine. It doesn't matter. Like, because you guys can like my take, you know, you can like it or hate it, but I will respect your opinions because it's your opinions. I'm not going to be like, hey, you're wrong, I'm right. No, it's, hey, this is where we're at and let's talk about it. But I thank you guys for everything. Thank you guys for your time. Again, to me, it means the world to me, you guys even just let me have a fragment of your time, especially because we know time is such a very valuable thing and we don't want to waste it. So guys, thank you so much for it. I really appreciate it. Thank you for your time. I hope you guys have a wonderful rest of your day. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. I know this is the 4th of July, so have a wonderful 4th of July with your family and your friends. Please be safe out there. Don't do anything dumb for all the folks here in the U.S. because it's the 4th of July. But for all people all around the world, please be safe. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. I love you guys to death, and I will see you guys next week. We're still trying to work out the schedule. Based on my work schedule, I think we're going to have to try shooting for Fridays. I will try my best to shoot for Wednesdays, but it really just depends on my work schedule, guys. But at the end of the day, thank you guys for everything. I love you guys to death. Have yourselves a wonderful weekend. Please be safe and don't do anything dumb, guys. And I will see you guys next week. Bye, guys.
Hey there. Thank you for listening to today's episode. I really appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for taking time out of your day and listening to today's episode. If you're interested in supporting the show, whether it be financially, clicking the follow button, or just sharing the episode, it all works for me, guys. Thank you guys so much for your time, and I love you guys to death.